Hello everyone, thank you for staying. This is a panel on... I'm Vincent Ghossoub, founder of Nifty Craft. We're building a 2D card battler MMO. I will let my great co-panelists introduce themselves one by one, Nikolai, Joanna, Sebastien, and Marilena. And then we'll dig into challenges and maybe opportunities in console and PC. Please.
Yeah, we don't have any extra mics, right? Okay. Okay, we'll share one. Perfect. Yeah, some of the people just saw the talk before, but I will also briefly introduce myself. Nikolai, I'm working as a customer engineer for Google. I'm working with the gaming team internally for developing open source projects for foundation, for infrastructure, and so on. And we're also working directly with customers, helping them scale their workloads. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, I'm Joanna. Currently, I'm a freelance marketing manager. I've worked in indie spaces for 11-bit studios, No More Robots and Cassetta, and I am fan mostly from the indie space, so community management, social media, etc. Really nice to be here.
Hi, my name is Sebastien Croteau. I'm from Montreal, so bear with me. I'm still jet lagged at 6:30 a.m. for me in the morning. I've worked with several video game companies, but now more on the service provider side of things. I've been doing mostly voiceover and localization stuff for the last 18 years in video game, and I'm also a voice actor, so you probably kill me in some video game and you don't know about it, so yeah.
I don't think I can top that. Hi, my name is Marilena. I am a producer at Crytek right now. I'm working on Crisis 4 working title. I've worked always in development, in production. Did a AA before, and now moving on to AAA, like in a more bigger space, bigger projects.
Welcome, guys. It's a great mix. We have AAA, indie, service providers, infrastructure. So as a gaming industry, you know, I listened to a couple of panels earlier. It seems it's the apocalypse. So there's so many challenges we can start with. One of them, at least in PC and console, is ever increasing production costs. And so from your various individual perspectives, how does it affect you? And how do you mitigate, how do you manage these skyrocketing costs? On the production side first. We'll touch on UA and marketing later.
Production is me, I guess. So I think that has always been done, but I think is now a thing that more and more studios are doing is outsourcing more. It's, you know, trying to get cheaper stuff on board. We in the production team, we sit down, we crunch the numbers, we calculate. Is it more expensive to do things in-house? Can we outsource literally almost anything? And the other thing, I think and that's more of a personal view, is that I don't think studios can be as experimental anymore in regards of, you know, switching from genre to genre. It is way more reliable to stick with a genre and to have tools in place, to have systems in place, to recycle assets. You know, we can save so much money and so much time there. I mean, I think there's also a reason that, you know, titles like Spider-Man 2 or Baldur's Gate, they did so well this year. It's because these studios know what they're doing, and because they had pre-existing systems that they put in place before the project even started. So this is not part of the project, this is not being calculated within the project, and so you just save money and time on that.
Yeah, and if you take the example of Ubisoft, because I work with them a lot, let's go to just recording costs, right? They used to outsource a lot of their recording in Montreal, and now they've developed their own studio, Alice. Because for them, like after looking at the numbers, it was on a more long term, but it was more profitable having your own resource, building your own tool, than just outsourcing everything, because the costs keep getting higher and higher. And you know, if you look at it, for them, it was more profitable to So I think that even that's true for Canada. A lot more company now are starting to develop their own tools instead of going like necessarily to something that is already existing.
Any view from indie?
In terms of indie, is that we have a lot of games that are the same. It's the same genre as was said here. Actually, I think the innovation is not the way it should, like, not at the stage it should be at. At the same time, I still think that it will be the indies time because of the whole layoffs and the turn down, because people are... We actually had a conversation before the panel about it, that I believe that this is the best time to start your own studio because so many developers of very good talent are available and they're tired of, you know, being just cogs in the machine, and the budgets of AAA is just going up and up and up, the pressure going up as well, crunch culture going back as well. In terms, for example, of Baldur's Gate, I love what they did marketing-wise because I was at EGX when I was just coming back from COVID. They had the same set they used for marketing purposes at events for 3 years in a row. They saved so much time and space and budget for it as well, and very consistent. Like, they did early access, but they were there for the community. They implemented feedback. So even though it was like a dark horse of the premieres this year, they did the time and they planned it very well throughout, you know, the events, and just predicted a lot of stuff that could have predicted. In the indie case, I think we really took advantage of AAA's going outside of the spaces during COVID times, because Nintendo didn't, you know, go to PAX East or West last year, for example. I was with Clubhouse at that time, so we had a very big stand right in the best view of people coming into the PAX Theatre, and overall, I think indies don't have budgets. Like, AI helps indies, but on the other hand, there is all the law and copyright infringements associated with that. So I think there'll be another point for the discussion, definitely.
I'm wondering, do you have like some indicator of how much today AI may be saving, generative AI, if used, maybe saving on your budgets or even infrastructure solutions, or anything?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about the AI. I've been working quite extensively with tools that, like the typical image to text to image, audio production and so on from generative AI space, and I can probably tell you that it's not saving much at all right now. So first of all, there are a lot of hassle around legal stuff right now. If you're using open source models like Stable Diffusion and whatnot, it's a very gray area. I know there have been some lawsuits here and there. There are some other models that are kind of protected from that. I know Google and some others are doing that, but they're not so useful for game development per se. I mean, it can generate a couple of, I don't know, vanilla assets for inspiration, quote unquote, for artists, but I don't know to which extent it's useful. I've seen a couple of good examples for audio generation, so text to voice with more or less human kind of voices that can be used for NPCs, and sometimes generating conversation for NPCs based on some texts, but not the generic LLMs. So to answer your question, if it's saving a lot of money, probably not so much now. We will see in the upcoming years once this settles down a little bit. So I don't know if anybody else has a perspective on that too.
I do. So it's very interesting that it's exactly as you mentioned, it is a gray zone. So for example, for us at Crytek, the art director of my project and me, we went to a talk this year about exactly that, you know, what is allowed, what is not allowed, what can you do with that? And since it's such a big gray zone, right now we are not allowed to use that because the laws still have to really solidify on what is allowed and what not. But in terms of art and all of that, we would have probably used AI only for inspiration. Literally to punch something in and get something out and say, I would like to have a skyline with mountains or a street, or, you know, and that is sort of a pre-concept that we are using, that we would be using for then creating real concepts, like, you know, blueprinting mostly.
And you probably saw the strike in the United States, SAG-AFTRA strike about, and one of the talking points is, of course, AI. And I can understand the concern of, the voice talent, because I'm one of them. But the thing is, like, if I place myself in the shoe of a video game company, if you have 3 million lines to record, I can envision that a company would love for NPC to work with AI-generated stuff, because the complex of recording all of those and everything that goes in it, it's so complex that if with AI it lessens the burden and it decomplexify the process of recording, like I can understand for very generic NPC that are just saying like, hey, come and buy my fish or whatever, just small line, that if it helps them with the whole process, I can totally understand why they would go that way. But the thing is with AI, and that's one of the things that I was discussing with someone else about AI a few months ago in another video game convention. Like AI doesn't have any star power, right? When you hire a voice talent, a well-known voice actor or a voice actress, like that voice talent will advertise his presence in the game, and therefore it might translate into sales. AI cannot do the same thing. It doesn't have the same star power. So for me, there's a place where we would need to coexist with AI as voice actors and voice actresses. Like it's impossible to say that AI will never be into voiceover. It's already his, right? So, and I see that.
Just a couple of comments on that. First one, I've actually been to a gaming event recently in Denmark, and I spoke with a person that is working for a company developing text for games, so storylines. And the way that they're using AI, the whole product is very interesting. So basically, it does not remove the job of writing the whole script for it, so the storyline. They write, I don't know, 50, 100, 200 pages, and they just feed it into this large language model and use it in the game for creating those like small storylines, so small extras of text, which is amazing. For them, it saves a lot of work, mundane work sometimes, and they still keep all the copyright of their text, and it's not just, taking some other people's work or expecting something random coming out of the large language model. So it's a fairly controlled environment, and for smaller studios to whom they sell this product, it's like a win-win situation. Regarding the voices, it's an interesting topic too, because I've seen already cases where like famous people, so not like professional voice actors, but like famous, actors and so on, selling the rights to their voice, so they don't have to do the recording themselves. They just like, hey, you can use this pitch or like the representation of my voice from like generative AI for the game or for whatever ad, and then the technology does it. It's a double-edged sword, in my opinion. So it's a little bit tricky, but yeah, you can see that happening in the very near future.
Yeah, but the example of James Earl Jones selling his voice for that they did with the Obi-Wan series. So we did that with actually it's a respeecher, one of the company from Ukraine who actually mixed the voice of James Earl Jones and the voice of the actors of Anakin Skywalker. But I think at this point for me it's inevitable that it's going to impact, not only the voiceover industry, but the industry in general. And even for now, if the cost of developing stuff with AI, internally speaking, for a video game company is maybe not that optimal, like at the rate AI is learning, like I think we can foresee in the next couple of years that it's going to be more and more implemented for video game development.
But an actor's voice remains the property of the actor. So is that what you're...
I guess they get royalties.
Nah, and that's the thing, like if you look at the strike in the US, like some of the company goes to the extent of when you go to a casting call, they ask you to sign a document and they can scan your whole body. You don't even have the role. Like they can scan your whole body, they can put it after that in the background. Instead of hiring background actors, they can use that.
So no copyright.
No. And it's just, so that's the thing. It might, like anything, people might abuse of that. And even when we sell our voices to video game, like it's mostly buyout, right? We don't have any residuals mostly from that. We don't have any more like, we don't make any money of X number of copies that are sold. They pay for services, and this is why we're usually asking a little bit more than the minimum salary.
But it doesn't seem like it's a technology issue. Like if you cancel AI and go back, I don't know, 20 years back, a studio could still record your, various snippets of you saying things and reuse them in the future.
Absolutely.
Without your permission?
Technically, and this is when I started to do voiceover in 2005, my first game was Far Cry Instinct. I did all the voices for the monster and the creature. In the contract was something very clear about you can only use the voices for that title specifically, because otherwise, we would go out of business. Imagine if any voice actor or voice actresses were giving away like everything and we could just reuse like all the same line. Evidently, depending on the game you're producing, some line might not be like accurate for the game you're producing, but that prevented the use of what we recorded for other video game.
It's amazing how we started the discussion with challenges, and inevitably, whenever we say hi today in the games industry, we have to discuss about AI somehow. But this helps me segue into an adjacent topic about emerging platforms. So most likely, consoles, PC, mobile are quite mature platforms by now, and a platform shift or an emergence of a new platform hopefully is an opportunity. Do you see the new platforms such as, I don't know, VR, cloud, live stream games, you name it, and the metaverse stuff, opportunities, or are they still too early, therefore it is a challenge? How do you see it, both from indie also or bigger studios?
I could probably say something about, it's just my personal perception, so I'm very interested in your opinion on that, if you have more knowledge. But I think for certain games, for certain genres, and what I've seen bigger companies do that don't necessarily have anything to do with games, right? BMW, Google, or Siemens, they're implementing more and more AR into their tools or into their workspace and everything. And with this being enabled in our daily lives, right, from here on out in 10 years, will we be more open towards using AR for games as well? I know, if we look at AR right now, games seem to be a little bit still wonky, cheesy. We might get a little bit, I'm not sure if you call it motion sick when you speak about AR as well. I know for VR it's like that. But I can't imagine that this would be something to look forward to in the future, because it will be all around us. So yeah.
Okay, I think, metaverse is a very controversial topic, same with Web3 and blockchain and all the other super innovative things that I think only AAAs can really have the budget to go into without being guaranteed a good turnaround on it. And I think most of these things are still gimmicky at the moment, because you have very big brands going into it, for example, doing Roblox words on the platform where everything that belongs to Roblox still, and it is due to unpaid work of children playing that game, making assets because they all live there. I agree with AR. I think it is emerging, but for example, I was really looking forward to HoloLens from Microsoft, and that project died, just crashed and burned. Whereas I thought it was so magnificent. Obviously, we're going to use it in medicine. We're going to use it in schools everywhere. We've only got Minecraft for schools now, which is nice, and Lego robotics and that space. But I think, for example, in Poland, where I'm from, I'm based in Warsaw, we finally got a game being used as set reading, for example. This War of Mine from 11 Studios, and I was hoping that over the 20 or so years we would be using games and technology more in schools, but I still think it's too early for that. And with technologies, I think VR is too small of a market. It's not big enough for indies to make games there, because the budgets will not be recovered, and at the end of the day, most of the indies operate from personal budgets of the CEOs. They don't have that much funding. With the situation, with Tencent, Embracer, and other companies, yeah, I don't think it's the space yet, maybe 10 years, but that was supposed to come around 2005. It was supposed to be big already there, and with Second Life, and yeah, Second Life is there, but Metaverse is not here anymore, so.
I can probably add a couple of points to what was just said. In terms of emerging platforms, I do 100% agree that probably the next big thing is going to be AR. For sure, not VR per se, because a lot of people suffer from motion sickness. I'm myself one of those people. I put a demo yesterday on my Quest 3 by mistake. It was a YouTube 360 video. It was just like a slow movement in the room, and I was like, immediately like, okay, no can I do. But AR in mix with VR, or one of those like gadgets that are appearing more and more from Ray-Ban and other like brands that are doing regular glasses with just a little bit of small screen or some sort of interaction, I think they will be booming very soon. I see the development within Google. For example, we had very recently in one of the conferences, an internal engineer came with a famous or infamous Google Glass. And the way that it was not applied for games per se, but it was used in a QC environment. So the person could see what are the steps for assembling or controlling the quality of a specific product. It was so cool, there's virtually any lag. And at the same time, it also has voice inputs and so on, so you can interact with it and you can get the on-screen instructions to do something. I think this can be also applied to, I mean, we have a good example for AR games. Pokemon Go was probably one of the very few, but it had a massive impact on the industry, I think. Even with your phone as a pass-through screen, imagine that with a headset that is slightly light and so on. So I definitely see a lot of things happening in this space very soon. Regarding the other platforms, maybe just like a side note, so streaming ones, I think the most popular one right now is NVIDIA Now, how's it called? The one from NVIDIA for streaming.
GeForce Now?
Sorry, GeForce Now, yeah. The technology is there, but I think it's only for the privileged players that have very good connectivity. Unfortunately, this is not the case across the world. There are a lot of technological advancements made into this. So, you know, like the phase of Stadia, unfortunately, did not meet the expectations of Google. It was discontinued, but the tech was amazing. Compared to everything else, I can say it from my personal point of view, the tech behind it, how it was passing the data through the controller directly to the router instead of going through TVs and whatnot. From the latency point of view, it was amazing. Unfortunately, yeah, other factors influenced it.
Yeah, and it was super important for indies as well. Like that was a huge throwback to the indies because there were still, you know, games that were supposed to premiere and then the service got discontinued. I remember that period, the panic really, because the streaming service was not available. Like it was not budget attainable for the indies. Stadia was like the new frontier.
But I do think there will be another attempt at, you know, massifying the streaming, because more and more games nowadays suffer from cheating, unfortunately. Like personal the first-person shooters and so on. There is not much you can do unless you completely isolate the operating system on the boot level, which I think is Valorant is the only one doing that, if I'm not mistaken. All the others, there are like so many toxicity and cheating in games, and with streaming, it's much more complex to do it. Either you use visual recognition and try to do some kind of, I don't know, aimbots or whatever, but other than that, it saves a lot of effort for fighting the bad actors in the gaming space. So I think, yeah, the streaming will re-emerge sooner than later. But yeah, my bets are on augmented reality.
It sounds like, with regards to the emerging platforms, you're optimistic, but not imminently. You're not optimistic at all. But it is definitely not like when mobile was emerging. So back then, you know, there were many emerging platforms where you could build sustainable businesses on mobile. Back then, maybe Facebook. We were fighting, is it a console world? Is it a mobile world? Is it a free-to-play world? Is it a premium world? There were all these new platforms coming out, and all many quite sustainable. Now we have new platforms, but they seem far away, at least from a commercial perspective, if not more fundamental in the eyes of Joanna. But I was wondering, Sebastien, do you, so since you're like a service provider to the industry, so you see in the early stages of any development cycle what's going on, is the mix of projects changing with you recently towards different kind of genres, categories, platforms?
Right now, because I was when I started, I was blessed to start in AAA. Like usually the career of any voiceover talent, you start with little project, you do some audiobook, you do some indie game, and then you start with AAA. I started right on AAA. And now what I'm trying to do is develop tools for indie game and AA mostly, because like most AAA can afford, like they never have any problem affording what we offer. But right now, with all the video game conference I've attended in the last 2 years, now more and more indie game or AA video game company are interested in what we do. So I have to find and adapt tools for them to be aware to, at least if they cannot afford, you know, buying our services for, let's say, live performances when we record, I have to do something else. Like we've been looking at doing sound libraries, because with sound libraries you can actually buy them for, you know, a minimum cost and actually have really great sound for your monster and your creatures. So for indie gaming or smaller company, that it's a good thing. We are also starting to look into AI generative stuff, because that's another thing. Like it's going to be it's already there in voiceover, like we talked about, but I do believe it's going to be bigger and bigger. So I have to be able to adapt what I do. And in the last year, I have a lot more indie game developers and AA company that are coming to us and ask us like how it's possible to work with us. So for me, it's been going to AAA and now being able to go down. But I have a lot of more requests from smaller company now than I had like a year ago.
Yeah, it sounds like improving efficiency of the existing paradigm is the name of the game, and effectiveness, not really like platform shifts. But regarding efficiency, I would like to circle back to my original first question before we move on to the segment about marketing and user acquisition. So you mentioned you manage your budgets with outsourcing, some form of outsourcing, using technologies. I love the idea of specialization. Actually, I remember I heard a friend of mine who had read like the Toyota Way, telling me that one of their learnings is that improving quality actually decreases costs, because you're so focused on doing one thing so well that you just do it so efficiently, and then the cost drops. That regarding, being, for example, specific to shooters and whatnot. Now, this is a way to reduce costs, but how are you seeing the profits? I mean, in the past, we can make a game for like $1 million or $2 million and then have maybe healthy margins, but now it seems like sometimes you have to invest $100 million and maybe you'll make 120, or I mean, this is like more hypothetical, but how are the margins being squeezed despite cost reductions or cost efficiencies, or are the margins expected to still be healthy?
So I didn't do the entire budgeting scope calculation of my project, so my answer won't be as specific as I hope it to be. But like how we treat budgets, and it's a very broad and tricky question because we try to save money by having more remote work and I don't know what the exact winning amount, I don't know the English word for that right now, but like the basically when you surpass the break even and you have a win, right? I don't have insight into that, but what we're trying to squeeze is really promoting more remote work and looking into outsourcing. I think it's a very financial question, which might not always be very related to production itself. I can only assume that since quality of life and just the cost of living increased, and so salaries need to increase too, and that's just the thing. We want to earn more money. We must earn more money, so we have to raise the salaries. And if there's one thing that's important, you know, I don't think we should save money on the happiness of employees. It's not always about salaries, also about, you know, putting money into events for your team. But I think, yes, the salaries have increased. Back then you didn't pay that much, now you kind of have. We, for example, we need more seniors on board. That's just the way it is. We cannot afford to have too many juniors on board because, as you said, we have to like specialize and focus on the genre that we're working and make it as perfect as possible with as much experience as possible. And so these people, these seniors, cost money. And that's, I think that's my take on it. I don't think it answers the question exactly, but I think maybe, you know, one of the others can go more into detail about that.
Okay, I can go from indie side. Sales cycle is super important because in indies it's not very much about the launch itself. It's more about the long-term strategy because you can do bundles. Like I specialize in Steam. Consoles were the second market for most of the games I worked on. So very much thinking about the whole cycle. Like what is the roadmap we have for the game? Are we going to have DLCs? Are we going to have partnerships? Are we going to do events and themed sales? A lot of times, indies, you know, there are around 1,000 titles per week or something like that on Steam. Like monthly, yeah, it's super huge. Yeah, so you have to really, you know, look at the page, what kind of assets you have marketing-wise, events, for example. The events I did were mostly correlated with having the front page for Steam. We don't do events that don't have the front page because that doesn't translate into wishlist. Wishlist is the, you know, make or break it for indies especially, but the conversion rate is like from 5% to 20% depending on the genre, so you can't really predict it. So the long-term strategy for like how to discount the game, where to do the bundles, how to do it, who to partner with is the most important thing. For example, AI would save time and, you know, work of a person. For me, for example, as a marketing manager, because then I wouldn't have to have a junior or an assistant to do stuff because ChatGPT is able to do that for me, like do a PR release or do some descriptions for Steam and brainstorm stuff. I think a lot of times at indies we have to really minimize the brainstorming stage, which then bites us. Like, you know, along the line because some things are not thought through, the target group is not addressed the way it should be, and the marketing campaigns, you know, they're super short, for example 3 months or like 2 months before the launch that I worked on, whereas 6 months is, you know, the most healthy. So I think to answer your question, like it's the same. I've never had like budget opportunity to like look through the numbers properly. But for us, it's the long-term strategy and not focusing on the launch itself, because we're competing with like maybe, for example, like 10 titles releasing on the same day if we're really unlucky. And just events focusing on Q4 or Q3. There are times where indies cannot launch. Like that's just a dead end for us, and we have to check the calendar and just make sure we optimize the costs where we can. And I think in indies it's even worse for seniors, to be honest, than juniors, like in that sort of thing, because you have to have a lot of hats. You have to do loads of things. Like even I had to do social media community, doing assets and doing like campaigns, whereas in AAAs it's very divided and you do silos of work.
Yeah, I can probably add a little bit here. I don't have access to numbers because I don't work with gaming studios directly in that sense. I work mostly on the infrastructure support and helping them save some costs from the delivery perspective. But what I often see, let's say there is a game that is launched and it's a single player or a multiplayer, it costs X, I don't know, 25 bucks, for example. They release a free DLC or an update that weighs, I don't know, 10 gigabytes, and they need to push it to, I don't know, 10 million players, for example. Just the cost of egress costs from the whatever cloud provider where they're storing it is immense. And I ask myself, how do they recover this money for a free update, for a security patch, and so on? It's just insane costs. So what I see is usually looking for partnership with either publishing studios or cloud providers for some sort of sponsorship there to help them with the infrastructural part. But at the same time, I see a very big push towards this in-game microtransactions. So, you know, like the typical selling skins, selling, I don't know, whatever kind of characters and so on and so on. I don't think this is a bad thing per se, but some games are definitely abusing it. Before you start the game, you get so many flashing things. They're just trying to extract the last couple of cents out of you, just probably to pay for all this constant need for, you know, infrastructure support, updates, the overall like salaries and so on. It's sometimes becoming, in my personal opinion, out of hand. But I don't know if this is just the way to go right now, or if there are any other alternatives. I don't think we will reach any consensus today. And whoever finds this first will be probably very successful in the nearest future. But yeah, this is the perspective that I see, and it's not very bright so far.
I know most of you here are premium game developers, but speaking of free-to-play versus premium, what is your take in terms of the current context? Which model seems to have more oxygen? Obviously, the free-to-play, you need scale of users, but ongoing support, ongoing maintenance, ongoing content. While on the premium, you need a strong launch campaign, probably, and then DLC campaigns, but maybe less ongoing content, I'm not sure. So, which model do you feel has more opportunity in the current context?
Games with replayability, games that are that have so many options. Take, for example, I have to say it again, a Baldur's Gate, where you can go through different classes. You replay the game 10 times because you want to choose, 10 different dialogues that you did differently before. So that is replayability, you know. Sandbox games, because it's so flexible. People just want to be entertained. People just want to break things, or, you know, I feel like this is a trend right now. Maybe we will move away one day and we'll go back to big blockbuster RPG games where you have the one experience. I've seen it with Spider-Man 2 again, that this is just, you know, one blockbuster experience and people love it. So there's still a group, you know, that is interested in it. But what I think where the most money flows into, and I think the production times are also just way, you know, less, is these kind of sandbox games where you can just do whatever you like, you return, you know, or in terms of battle royales, you know, you can, for example, Hunt Showdown has this, you know, extraction mechanic that you can just leave whenever you want. You don't have to continue the game if you don't want to. Flexibility, I think, is what people want. And this is where I think money right now is flowing more into, and has more, as you said, oxygen for that.
Well, if I were to take your reasoning to the extreme, it sounds to me like, let's call them platforms, so we don't say the word metaverse for Joanna. But it sounds to me like the Robloxes, the Minecrafts, the Fortnite now are probably the extreme of flexibility. You can even build the experience you want. So why were you discounting that opportunity early on? Maybe, and you know, there's a generational shift. We see younger consumers, flocking to the more freely expressing platforms more and more. It sounds like that could be a promising platform.
I think, you know, with Roblox and Minecraft being on the market and Fortnite as well for so many years, I think it is saturated by now, and I think it's also about the creator economy. Not everybody wants to be a creator. Some people just want to play the story, and I think with Baldur's Gate, it's a comeback to the games we knew from the 90s, and it's also a thing about the target group of gamers. Like, we are all aging. We all, you know, have our own responsibilities now. We're not longer like, you know, the teenagers. It's not only guys playing games either. So I think mean, I'm sorry, but it's true. It's like nearly 50% of women are gamers as well. And I think it is, at the end of the day, that, you know, with the price of games increasing, I think repairability is key, because people don't want to shell out $150 for a game that will be done with after 8 hours. You want to have the 300 hours, 500 hours, and I think, at least in the segment of indies, people are very conservative at the end of the day as well, in terms of game design and the choices for monetization. They want to make games that they will themselves play. I think AAAs have the sort of very big gap between the business expectations and the design of the game. They will, you know, make the transactions, make, you know, the things that make gamers angry, because it's a business at the moment. In indies, a lot of times owners make games they themselves long to play, so it's very much player focused. So, for example, for us, making microtransactions would be super negative, because people themselves would not want to do it, would not want to implement it, because they didn't quit like AA's or AAA's to go into indies to make the same stuff that AAA's are, you know, critiqued for.
I think, just really quickly, I think that's a very good point. Like, nostalgia plays an incredibly big role in that. And for example, a studio, right? And a studio that does it really well is Nintendo, right? If you look at Zelda, they managed to keep, especially in the last 2 titles that they published, they managed to stay true to nostalgic experiences for, you know, gamers in their 30s and 40s, you know, who played the very old games, while offering all this flexibility, these sandbox elements, you know, you can build your own vehicles or whatever in Tears of the Kingdom, which is just incredible, right? And I think that is a very good example that Nintendo made there, is to keep nostalgia and have target new people into this target group.
I think Zelda is an amazing example for that. Also, like, I think they just captured like the Breath of the Wild and the latest one. I don't remember what it's called. Still haven't played it.
Tears of the Kingdom?
Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah, Tears of the Kingdom. Yeah, I think those are great. But I don't know how they are from the point of monetizations, besides selling just the copies. But from the monetization point of view, I think we're forgetting one very important part here is, like, there are simulation games. And they also play a little bit on nostalgia. I'm personally a huge fan of Flight Simulator. And when the new one was released by Microsoft, with some French studio, I don't know who was it. It was Sharp AI for AI, and it was Ghossoub, I think, if I'm not mistaken. I think they did monetization in a great way. So there are creators that they have a marketplace for selling airports, selling aircrafts, and so on. That works well. The game was not cheap, definitely. I think the Platinum Edition or something like that was in the hundreds. But you have so many hours of gameplay there. So repeatability to a degree, but at the same time, it's always something new. And there is a huge community of people loving simulator games and tractor simulators, for crying out loud. Goat simulators, everything. And I think there is also one very underrepresented type of games here, which are completely silly games. I don't know if you ever played something called My Summer Car, which is like a...
Yes.
What the hell?
Love
it's amazing.
My summer car. Get my summer car today.
It's so silly. I don't know how many developers were involved in it, but it was a very...
It's amazing. It's so dumb.
And it's so dumb, but it's so cool, and it's sold, I don't know, it's sold in millions of copies. So it's one of those, like, surprising examples that sometimes super silly idea with super basic implementation and a lot of glitches here and there can become a huge success. And this was like a baseline for so many memes. So yeah, I think there is a lot of an explore space here eventually. But anyway, sorry, I digress.
I feel you totally by My Summer Truck.
No, My Summer Plane.
Plane, okay. So I'm looking for, you know, breathing spaces in the current market. And is there anything for indies to do on console?
Definitely. I mean, Xbox Game Pass is a huge reliever, I would say, in terms of getting to people that otherwise would not maybe give indies a chance. For example, when I worked at 11 Studios, they had a lot of their games already on Game Pass. So you would get people, you know, interested in the base game essentially, and they would buy DLCs, or they would buy the season pass. And No More Robots the same. They had amazing deals with Xbox Game Pass. So for example, Descenders, which is the flagship title for that studio, it's essentially like a mounting bike simulation. Actually, you use a mountain bike going down, you know, really cool tracks. Xbox essentially just enables indies to showcase games that would just get lost in translation, because you know, the Steam ecosystem with wishlists and with pushing stuff, you have to have very big communities, you have to be very involved on Steam, whereas Xbox now has, for example, clubs, you can do like a Twitter feed sort of, which helps with the communities, but PlayStation is not super indie friendly. You have the, you know, very AAA focus, I would believe, on PlayStation. The sales are not intuitive when you do them as an indie. Xbox is much easier, you just get permission from them to do sales, and you do it like on person basis, and Steam just invites you to a bunch of things, so you can plan strategy better. I think Nintendo is very close as well, but on the other hand, they opened up, for example, like adult content that was not available on Switch before, and I know a lot of ports of games going from Steam first to Nintendo. PlayStation is like the last platform they would think of, because you would have to implement the UI, UX, change things, change everything, and also I think Steam and Switch enable more creativity because of the adult content as well. You have to have the censorship on both Xbox and PlayStation, so some developers will not think of these platforms at all.
I hear praise to the Game Pass, but also outside of this panel I hear a lot of criticism to the Game Pass, especially how it depresses pricing, you know. So are you assessing it as a awareness channel or user acquisition, or is it a true sustainable commercial channel?
I would say it's really a window for people who just focus on AAAs into the indie world. Like, there are only so many developers there available for Game Pass. So for example, people that otherwise would not ever give, for example, a game such as, I think Limbo maybe on Game Pass, don't remember now. But for example, like with 11-bit, people that would never think of getting Frostpunk, they see it on Game Pass and like, oh, maybe I'll try it, and then, you know, go through affiliation for social media or Steam page and see other games recommended by the system. So for me, it's very much about awareness of indies. Because otherwise, you know, on console, AAAs get all the cream, to be honest. They get pushed to the front, and for example, I bought Xbox just for Forza. I didn't buy it for anything else, and PlayStation, I would buy it for The Last of Us 2, not indies or anything else. So it is about pushing awareness for people. But I do agree about the pricing depreciation, but, you know, on PC, apart from Steam, there's Epic Games, you know, and the giveaway of titles and stuff, but now it's frozen because it cost them too much money, I believe. So to get free publicity, I think it's super hard to get outside of like Steam and the events and just, you know, being up in front, representing your studio on TikTok or Twitter or X now. So yeah, brand awareness and just driving people to give it a try, and then maybe try it on PC as well.
Thank you. I'm not sure how we're doing on time here. 8 minutes. So I have a few more questions, but if anyone in the audience has any questions, I'll, you know, leave the floor to you first. Any questions?
Don't be shy, ask us.
They're downloading some car right now. Just looking it up.
YouTubing my summer. Seems you're doing a great job. So let me ask about user acquisition. So that's another topic that you know is part of the apocalypse discussion, and the traditional playbook of, you know, spending money on acquiring wish lists or acquiring downloads and then recouping it via LTV seems to be abused, and people are looking for new playbooks maybe. Do you guys have any view or any opportunity to offer among this this context of user acquisition?
I can, okay. So I specialize in organic marketing actually, which was a big surprise to me. I come from corporate marketing. So for me, on PC and console, people expect first and foremost to do organic, and paid is kind of like the bad, dirty words of using it only when needed to. I was super surprised, but we do a lot of these things nowadays. For example, you know, when Twitter was what it was last year, you could do, you know, dark posts, you could really push money towards, for example, trailers. Trailers work really well in acquiring users and getting people excited. The bad thing for indies, for example, is that because of COVID, a lot of events got cancelled. So the online events are super expensive. For example, PC Gamer Show, Eurogamer, and everything else being pushed, you know, online first. It's super tough to get into there. It's super tough to produce content that would be like high quality enough compared to AAA's being showcased there. So for us, if you like a AA, it's a bit different thing because you have a budget to spend on ads and really invest, for example, into Reddit, into promoting yourself on Twitter and Facebook. But on the other hand, if you're a small indie, you start with Discord. You pray for the best and make your Steam page and make a Kickstarter and get users from there. So it really depends what's the starting point for you as an indie.
What about partnering with some famous like streamers, YouTubers, Twitchers, and so on? Do you think this actually helps? Because I see a lot of trends like on YouTube statistics, how many people are actually, you know, watching live stream of games, especially like private previews or public, but through limited previews of the games through famous streamers. Do you think so? Acquisition?
It brings acquisition, but the thing is that wishlists time out, and for example, some people, like, it really is genre specific. For example, if you have a visual novel, some people will watch it back to back, never buy it. It was a case for one of the games I marketed, that people just watch it back to back, but it was really good to get the keys out to organic and very small influencers. So they did a lot of coverage for us for free, just for the code of the game. And I don't really believe in paying big YouTubers because they play like AAAs. And a lot of times the audience will not be on par with, you know, the AAA guy playing a very niche indie, I don't know, psychological game. That is the total opposite of like, I don't know, Total War game, or for example, a Battlefield game. It just, you will get an even negative buzz around the game that you just like dissolving the YouTubers, you know, sort of platform. But yeah, it is doable, but I think it depends more on choosing the right influencers and really making it work your way and not falling for the big numbers, because a lot of times you can still buy followers, you can still have the numbers not reflect reality. And I think that it's not the followers, it's the engagement rate that you see, comments and people reacting to stuff from YouTubers that really makes or breaks it.
Yeah. I wanted to say something to chime into what you said, but it will come back to me in a second. Oh yes, here it is. So with Hunt Showdown, we're actually doing the same. We're partnering with Twitch streamers with events on a regular basis, and basically do watch time giveaways. So if you watch the stream for I don't know how many minutes, you get a weapon and you get a hunter and so on and so forth. And this is basically, you know, encouraging people, hey, these are things you can get for free, but it's basically you can only get them for free if you have the base game.
Yeah.
Right? And that's you know, another step of encouragement, an invitation to go and get the actual game, which I think works quite well. Another maybe very, very small thing, what I think is important is a lot of people really start looking into it, how developers are being treated in the studio.
Yes.
Like the studio reputation, not just the games, but the studio reputation is important to people. It has become important. People start boycotting and not buying games if they see that a studio is mistreating their employees. I think we saw a very good example of back then Cyberpunk, you know, when that came out, that, you know, many people didn't want to buy the game because things, you know, came out, or when the Me Too wave started, many games were not bought from specific studios anymore because, you know, that's just, it has become important to people.
Wink, wink, Blizzard.
And and there's game that, if you take Dead by Daylight by example, that they do a lot more partnership with streamers now, but so many people stream the content anyway that, for them, like, they didn't start to look into having partnership with streamers like just very recently, because there are just so many people advertising the game, and it's the kind of game who always put up new content. Like, it's the same game, but like it's just having new characters, new DLC, so they kind of keep the attention of their players by producing always newer content. But I didn't think they feel the need to do any kind of partnership because in the last couple of years, because just people were already streaming and talking about the game because they always put in new content in the game.
Yeah, but there is no harm on like in streaming as a game like a battle royale, because somebody wants to play it in the end and not just watch it. Like, we're talking about some novel or some cool storyline. I mean, even like, what was that game about the cat, the Stray? I mean, if I would watch it on YouTube, I would probably not play it myself, or maybe just give it a try and that's it. Because there are so many games with an amazing storyline, and if you just watch the streamer play it in like a couple of hours, yeah, there's definitely a lot of impact on the sales of that game, for sure. So probably choosing the right target for your game, like target audience and target streamer, is very important.
Yeah, and I think you can always try to mitigate with embargoes as well. For example, you give an embargo to YouTubers, and most of the time, I think that's my experience with small YouTubers. They're super happy to have the key at all, and they will do anything not to disturb you as a developer. And they will, ask, oh, can I use this chapter? Can I show this? And I like that working, with Keymailer or Lurkit as like services to share keys, because then you get dialogue with the people directly. You don't have to go through the managers. You don't have to like fish for the emails via YouTube. And ChatGPT makes your work as well better for them, because it ranks, for example, with genre stuff. Influencers that would do well with your game, and that's how I use the AI, for example, in my work.
Thank you. I think we're out of time. Thank you, Marilena, Sebastien, Joanna, and Nikolai. Thank you for listening.